So, John, when was the first time you met Paul? Can you remember?
It was in Liverpool, you know, at a fete. I just remember, you know, it was that.
So it was fate?
No, it was a fete in Liverpool, you know.
So it was fate at a fete?
I suppose so, you know. But yeah, I mean, he just reminded me of the king, you know, and I thought...
The king? As in Elvis?
No, the old king that died, you know. I think it was his beard. You know, he just reminded me of him, you know, and I thought, yeah, you know, let's have him in the group, you know. Because, I mean, in those days, you know, it was all pretty embarrassing, you know, the music, you know, that they were giving us was, you know, and it was Tommy Steele, you know, and Marty Wilde, and Harry Hailstone. I don't know if you remember him, you know, he came from Hale in Liverpool, and he sang The Little Cow, you know, it was just wrong, you know, but that's what we were listening to, you know. Oh, little cow sitting in the field, every day I see you shudder. If you were mine, I'd take you home and love you like no other, like no other, like no other. If you were mine, I'd take you home and love you like no other.
So what was the boys' appearance like in those days, Mr. Williams? Can you remember?
They were scruffy, very scruffy. In fact, how they got past bonfire nights each year, I'll never know. But I do remember the first booking I got for them, and John Lennon got £2 for it. And I said to him, "What are you going to do with that?" And he said, "I'm going to put it where no one will find it." And I said, "Well, why don't you put it under your soap?" Very, very dirty and very scruffy indeed.
And then George came along, you know. He was always younger than me, you know. You know, and I do remember Mimi saying she could never get John out of the bathroom, you know.
Yes, well, my parents had exactly the same trouble with me when I was a teenager.
No, I don't mean that. What I meant was he liked the acoustics in the, you know, and he used to practice his guitar. And I don't think it pleased his Uncle George too much, to be honest with you. Fine, she's sweet. I see her walking down that street. Would I ask you very confidentially, ain't she sweet? You're not so sweet though, are you, Uncle George? Can I open the window?
Paul, so is it true in those days you had a terrible time trying to find a decent drummer?
It's true, but then we found out from John that he knew somebody called Bestie. And so, you know, we told Alan.
Ah, you mean Pete Best?
Well, that's what we thought, you know, but Alan got mixed up because he wasn't the brightest spark. And he phoned George Best up. And George was a footballer. He was playing for Manchester United at the time as an apprentice. And he'd never seen a drum kit in his life. But he came down and he auditioned, and it was embarrassing. But, you know, it's something that happened, you know. And we asked him later on if he'd like to be a fifth Beatle. And he said, yeah. And it was fine, you know.
I remember Paul McCartney asking me what my coordination was like, so I asked him if they had a tennis ball, you know, so I could show him what I could do.
Georgie, Georgie, they call you the Belfast boy. Georgie, Georgie, they call you the Belfast boy. They say, Georgie, Georgie, keep your feet on the ground. Georgie, Georgie, when you listen to the sound. Georgie, Georgie, put a light on your name. Hey, 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 play the game. Play the game, boy, play the game.
But it wasn't what they were looking for, you know.
So when did you first realise that the boys were getting tired of you?
Well, there was little things I just realised that they were getting tired of me, you know. There were just little things that they were doing that made me realise that they wanted me out, you know, just...
Such as?
Well, for instance, if I went round to John's house, his Aunt Mimi would scrub out the letters on the welcome mat. You know, different things like that made me realise. And then, of course, they went and got Epi. And, of course, that changed...
Do you mean Brian Epstein?
No, I don't mean him. I mean Epi, who was Pete Best's mate. He suffered from epileptic fits, and he didn't even last for 5 minutes, to be honest with you. It was a bloody waste of time.
So, Brian, when you first heard the boys, were you immediately taken in by them?
Yes, I was. I remember I went home to Queenie, and I said, Queenie, I've seen these boys, wonderful boys, and I think I want to manage them. And it was...
Ah, Queenie. Is that your mother?
No, Queenie, Freddie Mercury. I was sharing an apartment with him in Liverpool at the time. And he was very, very happy I'd found the boys.
So, Freddie Mercury, can you remember the first time you heard the Beatles? And what effect did it have on you?
Well, I thought they were different. Yes, I did like that, I must say. And they had plenty of oomph, and it was different. It was so nice at that time,
So you mean something you could get your teeth into?
Yes, I suppose so, yes.
It gave you something to chew on, did it?
What are you insinuating?
Can you remember the first time you ever seen the Beatles?
Yes, it was at the Cavern Club in Liverpool, and I was immediately drawn to John Lennon. I thought he had the most beautiful semi. Best semi I've ever seen.
A semi?
Yes, a semi-detached house. He lived there with his auntie, Auntie Mimi. It was wonderful. Wonderful.
So, John, can you tell us what the Cavern was like in those early days?
It was filthy and full of strangers, A bit like your house. Okay.
George, Hamburg must have been quite an experience for you.
It was a bit crazy, that I have to say. In fact, Johnny was always a bit wayward anyway. I always remember when we got there, he went off with a tranny.
What? You mean a transvestite?
No, a transit van, and it was full of gear, there was guitars and amplifiers and stuff, and it was handy at the time because we needed that type of thing. And so we took it, because, we were musicians, but we weren't very rich, and so it all came in handy.
And isn't it true, George, that you were sent back home to Liverpool from Hamburg?
Yeah, I was sent home for being underage. Yeah.
Underage for what?
Underage for Hamburg.
So how come you weren't underage for Liverpool?
Oh yeah, never thought of that one. Crazy. And it was in 1961 that a guy called Raymond Jones went into Brian's record shop in Liverpool and asked for a song that we'd done in Hamburg called My Barney, which was about a cuddly bear. When I heard about it, I had to have it, because I've always been a big fan of teddy bears, you know what I mean? Haven't I? Yeah, you have. See, told you.
My bunny, he doesn't have emotions. My bunny, he doesn't make a scene. Whoa, my bunny, I give him my devotion. Oh yeah. So don't take my furry friend from. Don't take my furry friend from. Don't take my furry friend from me.
It was crazy, we did anything, But what kind of a musician would do a song about a bear,
We asked the partially deaf Alan Williams why he thought Pete Best was sacked.
Well, don't quote me on this, but I do believe that one of the reasons that he was sacked was because he wanted the boys to wear feather suits, and they weren't too happy.
Don't you mean leather?
And another reason was because Pete had more curls than Paul. He wasn't happy.
Don't you mean more girls?
And also, Pete wanted to be nudie. And you can't have that in a group. Your drummer wants you to go.
I'm sorry. Don't you mean moody?
And also, he was better cooking. Better.
I think you mean better looking.
But that's only what I've heard.